There are people who wake up one morning and realize something unsettling. Not that they've failed at building the life everyone else seems to want, but that they don't actually want it. The career ladder that promises meaning through titles and corner offices. The packed social calendar that proves you're loved and successful. The constant motion, the endless networking, the performance of being perpetually available and enthusiastic. They look at it all and feel something closer to dread than desire. And the panic isn't about missing out. It's about something far more disorienting. The possibility that you've been moving toward a destination you never chose in the first place. This isn't laziness. It isn't fear of commitment or success. It's the quiet, creeping realization that the script everyone handed you, the one that promises fulfillment through constant productivity, social visibility, and external validation, was written for someone else entirely. For some people, this realization arrives slowly, like water seeping under a door. They've been doing everything right, showing up, performing, building the resume, the network, the image of a life that looks good from the outside. But somewhere along the way, the gap between what they're building and what actually nourishes them becomes impossible to ignore. They notice that the moments they feel most alive are the quiet ones. Reading alone on a Sunday morning, walking without destination, sitting in a room with one person who truly understands them, saying very little. Not the moments that photograph well or impress others. The moments that simply feel true. And then comes the panic. If I don't want what everyone else wants, what does that make me? The world has very clear markers for a successful life. They're posted everywhere, repeated constantly, reinforced through every conversation, every social media feed, every family gathering. You're supposed to want more friends, more experiences, more visibility, more achievement, more proof that you matter. You're supposed to feel energized by social interaction, not drained by it. You're supposed to find meaning in climbing, expanding, acquiring, becoming known. And if you don't, if the thought of all that makes you feel tired before you even begin, then something must be wrong with you. At least, that's what the panic whispers. Thoreau saw this clearly when he wrote, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." He wasn't talking about people who failed to achieve society's goals. He was talking about people who achieved them and still felt empty because they were living according to scripts written by others. Scripts that promised meaning, but delivered only busyness, noise, and the exhaustion of constant performance. Thoreau went to Walden Pond not to escape life, but to find it. To strip away everything that wasn't essential and see what remained. And what he found wasn't loneliness or failure. It was clarity, sovereignty, the ability to live deliberately instead of reactively. He wrote, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived." For you, the panic might feel like this. You're at a gathering, surrounded by people talking about promotions, vacations, plans to expand, grow, acquire, achieve. And you feel yourself shrinking inside, not because you're jealous, but because none of it resonates. None of it feels like your life. You smile, you nod, you perform interest. But inside you're thinking, I don't want any of this. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say that out loud. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with this realization. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the loneliness of being surrounded by people who are all moving in a direction that doesn't call to you. Of sitting in rooms full of conversation and feeling like you're speaking a different language entirely. You watch people get excited about things that leave you cold. You see them energized by experiences that would exhaust you. You notice how easily they seem to want what they're supposed to want. And you wonder, why can't I just be like that? Why can't I just want what everyone else wants? I remember the exact moment I felt this. I was sitting in a meeting about scaling impact and maximizing visibility, and everyone around the table was energized, leaning forward, throwing out ideas, and I felt like I was underwater, watching from a great distance. Not because the work was bad or the people were wrong, but because the entire framework, the assumption that more is always better, that visibility equals value, that rest is something you earn only after you've exhausted yourself, felt fundamentally incompatible with how I'm built. I wanted less, not more. Depth, not breadth. A small life that felt entirely mine, not a large one that required constant performance. And the panic came from realizing, I can't say this. People will think I'm broken, or lazy, or afraid. I spent months trying to talk myself out of it, trying to convince myself that I just needed to try harder, be more grateful, adjust my attitude. But the feeling didn't go away. It got stronger, clearer, more insistent, until I finally understood. This wasn't a problem to be solved. It was information to be honored. But here's what I've learned since then, and what Thoreau understood centuries ago. The life that looks impressive from the outside is often the life that feels most hollow from the inside, because it's built on other people's definitions of success, meaning, and worth. The quiet panic you feel isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that something's right. It's your inner compass trying to get your attention, trying to tell you that the destination everyone else is racing toward isn't your destination at all. Schopenhauer spent much of his life arguing that most people live in a kind of sleepwalk, driven by what he called the will, a blind, insatiable force that keeps them chasing, acquiring, performing, never satisfied. He believed that true peace comes not from getting what the world tells you to want, but from stepping back and asking, what do I actually need to feel alive? For most people, the answer involves far less than they've been taught to believe. Less noise, fewer obligations, fewer people, more silence, more space, more time to think, feel, and simply be. Schopenhauer wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free." This isn't about rejecting all connection. It's about recognizing that freedom, real freedom, requires the ability to step away from the collective script and ask what you actually want. But admitting this feels dangerous, because if you don't want what everyone else wants, where does that leave you? Here's where most people completely misunderstand you. They think you're rejecting ambition, connection, or contribution, that you're giving up or checking out. But that's not what's happening at all. You're not rejecting a meaningful life. You're rejecting a performed life, a life built on external validation, constant motion, and the exhaustion of trying to be someone you're not. You're not afraid of depth. You're afraid of shallowness disguised as success. And the life you're quietly imagining, the one that feels almost too small to admit out loud, isn't a failure. It's a different kind of architecture entirely. It's a life built around what actually nourishes you, what restores you, what allows you to think clearly, feel deeply, and contribute in ways that don't require you to betray your own nature. Thoreau called this living deliberately. Schopenhauer called it escaping the tyranny of the will. Jung might have called it individuation, becoming who you actually are instead of who the collective expects you to be. But whatever you call it, it requires something most people find terrifying: the willingness to disappoint others, to let go of scripts that don't fit, to build something that looks strange from the outside but feels true from the inside. The panic intensifies when you start to see how deeply the standard script has shaped your choices. The career you chose because it sounded impressive. The city you live in because that's where ambitious people are supposed to be. The social commitments you maintain because that's what good friends, good partners, good family members do. Layer by layer, you start to see how much of your life was built on should rather than want. And the question becomes, if I let go of all the shoulds, what's left? This is the terrifying part. Because for a while, the answer might be, I don't know. You've spent so long performing the script that you've lost touch with your own desires, your own rhythm, your own sense of what a good life actually feels like. Let's be clear about what this isn't. This isn't about rejecting all structure, all work, all connection. It's not about becoming a hermit who refuses to participate in life. It's about discernment, about knowing the difference between what drains you and what nourishes you, between what you're doing because it matters and what you're doing because you're afraid of what people will think if you stop. Some people thrive in large, visible, fast-moving lives. They genuinely love the energy of crowds, the stimulation of constant novelty, the validation of external success. If that's you, there's nothing wrong with that. Build that life with intention and joy. But if you're reading this, that's probably not you. You're someone who feels most alive in the margins, in the quiet, in the small, unhurried moments that don't translate well to social media or dinner party conversation. You're someone who needs solitude the way other people need socializing, who needs depth the way other people need breadth. And the panic comes from realizing that the world doesn't have a clear script for people like you. There's no roadmap for build a small, quiet, deeply meaningful life that doesn't look impressive from the outside. There's no cultural celebration of, I have 3 close friends, work I care about, and long stretches of uninterrupted solitude. So you're left to build it yourself. And that feels both terrifying and strangely liberating. Here's what this might look like in practice. It might mean turning down promotions that would give you more visibility, but less time to think. It might mean saying no to social invitations, not because you dislike the people, but because you know the cost of performing for 3 hours will take you 3 days to recover from. It might mean choosing a smaller apartment in a quieter neighborhood over a larger one in a better location. Because what you actually need is peace, not prestige. It might mean letting some friendships fade, not out of cruelty, but out of honesty, because you don't have the energy to maintain connections that require constant performance. It might mean working less, earning less, achieving less in the eyes of the world, so you can live more in the ways that actually matter to you. None of this is easy, because every choice that moves you toward the life you actually want will be read by someone else as a failure, a retreat, or a waste of potential. Your family might worry, your old friends might drift away, people who don't understand you might judge you. But here's the truth that took me years to accept. Their confusion isn't your responsibility. You're not obligated to live a life that makes sense to people who are wired differently than you. Thoreau wrote, "If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. You hear a different rhythm, a slower one, a quieter one that values depth over speed, presence over productivity, authenticity over performance. And the panic you feel isn't a warning that you're going the wrong direction. It's a signal that you're finally starting to go the right one. If we go one layer deeper, something important appears. The panic often has roots that go back further than you realize. Maybe you grew up in a family where love was conditional on achievement, where your worth was measured by grades, trophies, accomplishments that could be displayed and celebrated. Maybe you learned early that being quiet, needing solitude, or wanting less made you seem ungrateful, lazy, or strange. Maybe you spent years trying to prove you weren't those things, trying to want what you were supposed to want, trying to build the life that would finally make you acceptable. And now, decades later, you're exhausted, not from failing, but from succeeding at something that was never yours to begin with. This is where the real work begins, not the work of achieving more, but the work of unlearning, of separating what you actually want from what you were taught to want, of giving yourself permission to build a life that doesn't need to be explained or defended. There's also this. For many sensitive, introspective people, the standard script feels violent, not physically, but psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. The constant demand to be on, to network, to perform enthusiasm, to prove your worth through visibility and productivity. For someone whose nervous system is wired for depth, nuance, and careful observation, this isn't just tiring, it's destabilizing. It's like being asked to live in a language that isn't yours. You can do it, you can translate, you can perform competence. but it costs you something essential. And over time, that cost becomes unbearable. Let's make some distinctions, because this is where confusion often lives. Wanting a quiet life versus hiding from life. Wanting a quiet life means choosing depth, simplicity, and intentionality. It means knowing what nourishes you and building around that. Hiding from life means avoiding all discomfort, all growth, all risk. It means staying small out of fear, not choice. Rejecting the standard script versus rejecting all responsibility. Rejecting the standard script means saying, "This path doesn't fit me. I'm going to build something different." Rejecting all responsibility means refusing to contribute, connect, or care about anything beyond your own comfort. Needing solitude versus isolating out of pain. Needing solitude means recognizing that you restore, think, and create best when you have space and silence. Isolating out of pain means withdrawing because connection feels too dangerous, too exhausting, or too exposing. Living deliberately versus drifting. Living deliberately means making conscious choices about how you spend your time, energy, and attention, even if those choices look unconventional. Drifting means letting life happen to you, reacting instead of choosing, numbing instead of feeling. The difference is intention, awareness, honesty with yourself about what you're moving toward versus what you're running from. Here's what you can do, gently, without forcing anything. First, give yourself permission to want what you want, not what you think you should want, not what would impress others, what actually calls to you. Write it down if that helps. I want a life with more silence, more time to read, fewer obligations, deeper conversations with fewer people. Second, start making small choices that align with that vision. You don't have to burn everything down. You don't have to make dramatic announcements. Just start saying no to things that drain you, and yes to things that restore you. One declined invitation, one boundary set, one evening protected for solitude instead of obligation. Small choices, repeated over time, become a different life. Third, find or create 1 or 2 relationships where you can be honest about this, where you can say, "I don't want the life everyone else seems to be building, and I'm trying to figure out what I do want." You need at least one person who won't try to fix you or convince you you're wrong, who will simply witness your process and say, "That makes sense." Fourth, practice tolerating other people's confusion or disappointment without abandoning yourself. This is hard, but it's essential, because the life you're building will confuse people, and their confusion will feel like judgment, and that judgment will make you want to go back to performing. Don't. Stay with your own truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Fifth, give yourself time. You've spent years, maybe decades, living according to someone else's script. Unlearning that and building something new doesn't happen overnight. Be patient with yourself. This is deep work, identity work, soul work. Sixth, notice what actually restores you. Not what's supposed to restore you, what actually does. For some people, it's long walks alone. For others, it's reading, writing, gardening, sitting in silence, working with their hands. Pay attention. Your body knows what it needs, even if your mind hasn't caught up yet. Imagine this. 5 years from now, you wake up in a home that feels like a sanctuary, not a showpiece. You have work that matters to you, even if it doesn't impress anyone else. You have 2 or 3 people in your life who truly see you, who don't need you to perform or explain yourself. You spend your evenings reading, walking, thinking, creating. Not because you're avoiding life, but because this is your life. The one you chose, the one that fits. You no longer feel the panic of living the wrong story, because you're finally living your own. People might not understand. They might think you're wasting potential or playing it too safe. But their confusion doesn't touch you the way it used to, because you've learned the difference between a life that looks good and a life that feels true. And you've chosen truth. The quiet panic you feel right now isn't a warning, it's an invitation. an invitation to stop building the life everyone else expects and start building the life you actually want. It won't be easy, it won't be celebrated, but it will be yours. And maybe that's the only thing that ever really mattered. But here's the question that comes next, the one that lives just beneath this realization. Once you've decided you don't want the standard script, how do you actually build something different without losing yourself to fear, doubt, or the weight of other people's expectations? That's a different kind of navigation, one that unfolds in the next quiet conversation. Alone Together, a quiet corner of the internet for people who choose solitude over half-hearted connections.